taught us about ecology, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and obviously, most of us are old enough to remember the Rachel Carson and the DDT lessons that the Eagles taught us, and we're learning about lead shot thanks to the Eagles, and I'm sure there are other things we can learn from them. So, without further ado, John, take it away.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to everyone in St. Paul Audubon Society for having me and the Raptor Center come and do a little talk. We're thrilled to be here. I'm going to present here. Just a heads up for those that are here. We are very lucky to work with some amazing people here at the Raptor Center, but also some birds, which is the really fun thing, especially for an Audubon group. So I do have some special bird guests with me in the room right now. So if you hear an occasional vocalization, I don't think that you'll probably hear them, but I can't make a guarantee. And if you hear some interesting squawking, I guess they will have divulged their identity to you. So just a disclaimer ahead before we get going here. I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully you can see that. Does everyone see? It appears.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
Awesome.
That's good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I see it from here.
All right. Thank you. All right. So yeah, and the theme of the talk, or our talk today, is kind of talking about using raptors as a lens into ecosystems, with all of this in mind. About veterinary medicine, which is kind of a focus, and research and education, which are kind of our core focuses here at the Raptor Center. And again, my name is John, and I'm the education program manager here at the Raptor Center. I'm very excited to be at the Raptor Center. A little bit of a background on me. I do have a wildlife background in terms of academics. I went to Penn State and studied wildlife and fisheries sciences there, and specifically birds, and then got to Minnesota. That was my ticket to Minnesota, was did my master's here, and I worked with David Anderson, who is the head of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Co-op unit. That is the cooperative unit between the University of Minnesota and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and studied, I hate to say it, I didn't study raptors. Don't tell anyone outside this group, okay? But I studied shorebirds in particular, and some raptors, but mainly all bird communities up in the tundra, up in Churchill, Manitoba, for my master's, and was particularly studying how do bird communities respond to increased snow goose density up in that area. And then after that, worked a little bit with different wildlife projects, and then actually got into education. I started teaching at the U with some classes, and then also at some other local colleges. A big one where I had lots of work done did a lot of work, was Dunwoody College of Technology downtown. And then actually got into K-12 schools, and has primarily spent most of my time doing education at Hopkins High School. And I was a science teacher there, AP environmental science teacher there, an alternative school science teacher there for 16 years. And then I have shifted into my new role here at the Raptor Center as the education program manager. And so I'm super excited because it's fusing my love of birds and also my love for education into an amazing opportunity and career. So, and I just love birds. So I like to go out bird watching a lot, and whether it be raptors or not. So the Raptor Center, I've always, before I got the job there, I've always known about it, always been sort of obsessed about it. I heard about it right when I first moved to Minnesota back in 1998. And it's just, for me, I see it as a keystone institution kind of on the university campus, and also part of our community in St. Paul and the Twin Cities. Most people, I think a lot of people know what it is. They know what we do. And It's an amazing place to be. The Raptor Center, for those who don't know, started in 1974, and it really started with these two gentlemen, Dr. Gary Duke and Dr. Pat Rettig. And at the time, Pat Rettig was a veterinary student, and they became really interested in how to rehabilitate a series of small owls initially, and became fascinated by that whole process of how do we do veterinary work on raptors, which was essentially unknown at that time, or very little research or information existed on what are best practices towards rehabilitating birds of prey in particular. And so it really started in the basement of a veterinary building here on campus at the University of Minnesota. And so that's why the Raptor Center is actually part of the veterinary college here. But even though it works with wild birds, so it's such an interesting nexus of veterinary techniques, of conservation, natural resources. It's such an interesting blend of all these different fields. And so this is where we are today. We've moved out from the basement. All right. So hopefully many of you have been there.
It's me.
Yes. We'd love to see you. We are open to the public, and we'll give you more details on that at the end. But we are based at the St. Paul campus, the Gabbert Raptor Center, and we do have a education department and also a clinic downstairs, which we'll give a little more description to. Our mission is to ensure the health of raptors and the world that we share. So, and what an amazing mission, because it's not just raptor focused, but it's ultimately all environmental focus. We focus intensely on raptors, obviously, but we feel that raptors are a lens into larger environmental issues, and that the work that we do there informs us not just about the health of individual birds, but it informs us about the health of our environment, and allows us to hopefully learn more and take further action if we do detect environmental problems. And we've seen that raptors in the past, in history, have been an amazing lens for detection of environmental problems, like was referenced before, DDT. And we still feel that they continue to be an amazing lens to look at current issues that might still exist or pop up. So the question is, how do we achieve this mission of protecting raptors in the world they live in? And we kind of like to think of it as kind of three broad categories. There's one thing I love about working here is there is so much variety of what we do. It's sort of a grab bag of a whole lot of different things that we do and focus on. And so when we take that miscellaneous set of stuff that we work with, we kind of like to broaden or put it into these kind of three broad categories, which is working with veterinary work, educational work, and research. So we'll kind of give a brief overview of all those things here. Let's first talk about the origination of the Raptor Center, which is the veterinary side. And again, Drs. Duke and Dr. Rettig came from veterinary backgrounds, and ultimately that is the heart of our work, is finding or receiving injured raptors and doing our best to bring them back to good health and hopefully releasing them back into their native or natural habitats. Right now, we on average get about 1,000 birds a year. It can obviously fluctuates a little year to year. Right now, actually in 2021, we are definitely ahead of where we were for total last year. We've gone past the number of birds, I guess there are clients, that we have taken in. So I think last year was around low 900s. And already in November, we've surpassed that amount. And I don't know if it will be a record-breaking year for us, but it will probably, if things continue as is, will be close to a record-breaking year in terms of number of birds received. So about 1,000 every year. They come from all over the place, and they come with a variety of different maladies that we are tasked to look at and see how we can treat. We're not able to rehabilitate everyone. And I think that sometimes is a misnomer, is sometimes the injuries of certain birds are so significant and so severe that we don't have the medical tools to really give them a high quality or high welfare associated with their healing. But we do our best to really assess every single situation as best we can and look for the best possible option. And if that includes medical treatment and rehabilitation, then we definitely pursue it. And these birds are amazing to learn from. I kind of think of like each bird is like a book in a way, and like each has their own separate story. And over the years, 46 or, over 40 years of work here, like we've read a lot of books in a way, or seen a lot of books. And we kind of have a really nice library of information now about particular species and about the environment that might be impacting these species. So here we've got a bunch of different pictures of different birds that we have taken in. And you can see they come with a various set of injuries. We've got an eagle with obviously some sort of wing trauma. This peregrine falcon has had some sort of foot injury. And underneath all the duct tape, which this looks a little unusual, is medical treated like gauze or bandaging. But they need the feet to really be spread out to really treat and heal that space. So as you can tell, probably, as you might guess, peregrine falcons and most raptors are not thrilled with our presence and having to manipulate them to get them in a healing state. And so the duct tape there is to help keep things in place. Birds with wing injuries really need to be, the wing needs to be held down and kept stable for a long period of time to promote healing. And that means sometimes they're going to have to be significantly isolated for a small period of time or whatever time to really make the healing the best possible it can be. We've got a hawk over here with a wing injury, an owl in a box, and the stories going on, the varieties of reasons why we receive birds is extensive. And all these birds come in a variety of different ways from the public. We've got an amazing resource of volunteers that work with us in so many different ways. We've got amazing education department volunteers who I know are on here. You're the best. You're the best. Thank you. We've got an amazing set of clinic volunteers that are downstairs helping to feed, treat birds regularly. We've got volunteers who transport birds from all over the state and even out of state. And they come in a variety of different ways here. So here's transport volunteer rescue eagle. This came in a box. We've got another version of the box here on the right, a way to secure the bird that's inside. Laundry baskets, Tupperware containers, you name it. I think this is just a large sort of pipe container. If I recall, I asked Steve on the right here, even has the intake form on the green taped to them. So we get a variety of birds that come through the door often every day in a variety of different states and packages. And they come for a variety of reasons, and they need a variety of assessment of medical initial assessments. So here is a common one, or more common than I think a lot of people think, is soccer nets and owls. They get tangled up very easily, especially if they are hunters at dusk and dawn and low light conditions, and rodents or prey items are running through the nets. They may go after the rodent, may not fully get that the net is there and get tangled up very easily into it and get significantly injured, besides just getting tangled as they try to extract themselves. So this is kind of something that I think a lot of people don't even consider, but it's a common sort of entry for owls that hit our clinic. Here's another of our amazing volunteers bringing in a newly found bird from the public. And then they go into our clinic, which is the whole operation are downstairs of our building. And we've got an amazing team of medical experts. On the left there is our medical director, Dr. Dana Franson Klein, working with a young great horned owlet. We have other veterinarians on staff. This here is Dr. Annette Allman. And we have veterinary interns, we have vet students who work with us, we've got vet techs. It's an amazing place. And considering that really is sort of the birthplace of Raptor medicine, we still take that moniker or mantle very seriously and really believe in training the next generation of folks who want to learn more about Raptor medicine. And again, there's so much to learn, so much more to learn, but we already have a lot of amazing, qualified, knowledgeable staff to help. Here's Dr. Franson Klein looking at one of our smallest patients here, a saw-whet owl, with doing an eye check. We do see a good number of injuries to eyes. There's a lot of broken bones that come through the thing, but we do see a fair number of eye injuries, and some of the birds that aren't able to be fully rehabilitated and released back in the wild, they might be able to be rehabilitated to a good state of health, but maybe their health or their injury is to a point where makes them unreleasable back in the wild. And if they can be trained and tolerate humans and do programming, we will have them join the education team, either with us or find a suitable placement for them in other nature centers or environmental learning locations around the country. And we have quite a few that are on our team now that have eye injuries, likely due to collisions with things. And for a raptor uses their eyes. It's one of their defining features is amazing vision. And so injury to the eye is significant, and it is important that it's fully healed in order for it to be ensured that it can be released back in the wild and be successful. We don't want to just heal them and throw them back in. We want them to ensure that we have good success. And we have good data on that. We've had band returns from owls that were released in, 20 years later and found again. So there's some amazing stories with our band returns of how long some of our birds live after their time with us. And we want them to be as successful as possible. Some more pictures here of some of our veterinary activities. When a patient comes in, they're going to get a full look over from our medical team. They're going to look at everything: eyes, breathing, if there's any sort of noticeable acute injury, if they're going to look at feather condition. This is part of this wing analysis here that you're looking at, is what do the feathers look like? What state of are they in? Are they damaged? Those types of things. They'll take blood. We're going to do blood analysis on certain things. So it gives a full medical review of what's going on, a full comprehensive exam. And in some cases, injuries might require surgery. We have some amazing donors out there who have donated a lot of the actual equipment that's required to put raptors back together and heal them as best we can, including surgical equipment, including x-rays and radiographs. And so we're incredibly fortunate to have an amazing base of donors and people who are passionate to help us find and use the best equipment we can to help bring these birds back to health. And so here is a picture of a surgery that is occurring on one of our patients. I have a little friend over to my left who's making some noise. So if you hear some noise, not vocalizing, but jumping around a lot. So if you hear that, that's that. Here's an amazing picture of a patient that was in, I don't exactly remember the specific time, but a barred owl that had a significant bone break in the leg. And here is actually on the side is kind of I don't even know what the material is, like sort of a squishier but strong rubber-esque material, I believe. And then that's used to help put a splint or a bar or a rod through the bone to help actually stabilize the bone to make it heal. And then ultimately, once the bone is healed, that is removed. Kind of amazing, almost orthopedic surgery in a way. And ultimately, they, a lot of the time that our birds will spend are down in the clinic healing. They might get their treatments, they will get checkups, they'll get fed, obviously, and checked in on by clinic volunteers. and our medical staff. But ultimately, the goal is to get them healed enough so that we can get them back in the wild. Part of that is after the healing is done, if it's a significant physical injury, is to get them out on the path to flight again. And it's just like physical therapy for anybody who has had a broken bone of their own. You need to build your muscles and your flight back up. And so we have volunteers who work on this, who take out these birds and do flight crew. And we use a technique called creance line. Creance work, and basically the bird is attached to a line that is a certain length, and they are released to go fly, and the volunteers really watch the flight patterns, watch how their wing beats, their general behavior during flight, and are looking for certain key points. And these points or data points are used to determine, is the bird ready? Is the bird ready for release? Is the flight compromised? Is it not? Does it need more medical investigation? So this is another very critical part of the rehabilitation journey. And if you've been to the St. Paul campus before, our medium size raptors like hawks and peregrines and owls, large owls, are getting flown out on that huge lawn right off of Cleveland. So that's kind of fun to watch if you're ever out there. The small guys get flown down in the basement. So our small owls and like kestrels and such in a hallway because they are safer there than being out on a large lawn with actual wild raptors being around. And the eagles, they get sent out to Lake area around Lake Como because they're big and they need more space. And ultimately, the whole goal is to finally reach this point, which is we're finally releasing the bird back into the wild. And again, it depends on the species when they get released and the nature of their journey of rehabilitation. This eagle is a juvenile, and we usually release juvenile eagles in the winter. But it depends on the species. Some migratory species, like a broad-winged hawk, if we had an injured one during the fall migration window and the injury doesn't heal up fast enough, we will hold that hawk until the next migratory season. So it depends on the species and their journey as to when they get released, but this is the goal. So only if we care, only if we understand, can we care, and only if we care, will we help. So this is a quote that Dr. Hall, our executive director, really likes. And obviously Jane Goodall, amazing scientist, conservationist, really getting at the heart of what makes us act, what makes us think about wanting to help. And it's that care piece and trying to develop empathy. So veterinary work is the first core of the Raptor Center. It's what founded the Raptor Center. And even today, we are taking this very seriously and we're training lots of new folks. We have a fund for residency, and we're actually going to hire a 3-year residency situation for a veterinarian to work to continue that training legacy of getting more people trained to be veterinarian, provide medicine for raptors. And with that kind of leads us to the second kind of overall arch of the Raptor Center, which is education. Veterinary work is one of the first ones. And then we do a lot of education, public education activities. We educate also or train veterinarians, but we also do general public education. This is a picture from one of our big public events, the Raptor Release, which is designed to provide the public a chance to view some of our releases, but also hopefully to give them touch points and experiences close with raptors to inspire them and hopefully indicate more care or willingness or empathy towards birds and beyond. These birds, we've mentioned them before, if their injuries are sustained and would preclude them from being released in the wild or could limit their ability to survive in the wild. If they are good candidates for education programming and can undergo good training, they will join an education team. We have 28 animal ambassadors on the education team currently at the Raptor Center, and including this great horned owl, and they go and do a variety of education programs either on site are seen by the public on tours, or they go offsite to various places and teach others, like these school children, about the beauty of raptors and the environment. And we view the education component as significantly important, just as important as our veterinary work, because it's hopefully going to educate people to do right things. We would love it if there were never any raptors that we would see. I mean, it would be sad if we were at the Raptor Center and didn't see raptors, but ultimately, if we didn't ever receive raptors, that would be the real win. And so educating the public on how they can help to avoid raptor trauma, injuries, and also help the environment. When you help raptors in their environment, you're helping other species as well. In the pandemic, we've had to adjust our tactics, as you can go into as many places as anywhere, as you all know, because we are all living in it. Hopefully getting out of it here soon. And the amazing thing is our team stepped up and have really shifted to some amazing virtual programming that took off really great in the form of long programming or even short Zoomy sessions, which were amazing. So we have an amazing team of education staff that have really worked hard to adapt to situations. And our birds have adapted as well. They're getting good at the iPad work, all right, as our Eagle Max here is doing. So education is so important, and we want to try and touch as many audiences as possible and reach out to different groups that we may not have interacted with before. And that's pretty cool. We have a grant right now from the state ENRTF fund, Environmental Natural Resources Trust Fund, which is linked to LCCMR lottery funding. And they are allowing us to have 2 years of funding for getting into underserved schools. And we are doing more programming with trying to get to 150 schools, underserved schools a year, and reach students that we perhaps have never reached before, and extend that, hopefully, awe of birds and animals to them. And our last kind of category of work is research. We've got the veterinary work, we've got the education work, and we've got research. Here's one of our vet techs doing lab work. That was the most researchy, I guess, picture I could find. Corinne, you're rocking it. Good job. We've been involved with lots of research in the past. Lead toxicity is a very popular or well-known one. It's been a point of concern from almost the inception of the Raptor Center, and is still a major topic in environmental work, especially with birds today. We are doing research and have done research associated with wind turbines and how do birds respond, particularly raptors. As you know, probably wind turbines can present to be an issue for particular species, and raptors are amongst those. Many species of raptors have collisions with wind turbines. There's interest in learning how can we prevent collisions with wind turbines, because obviously wind energy is an amazing resource in terms of renewable energy, and is only probably going to increase in its use over time. So how do we keep that resource, but also protect important wildlife, including birds and bats? And so they're doing some hearing studies. There are some hearing studies going on right now with eagles and red-tailed hawks that have been occurring actually this year. As you can imagine, studying birds' hearing is probably hard. And from what I understand, although I'm not involved with the studies, it sounds like it's hard. My colleagues have been like, yeah, the bald eagles landed on the camera or the sound equipment and broke it today. You know, it's hard to get bald eagles to do exactly what you want. They don't understand our research protocols all the time. So, but it's working. You always make adjustments, and we learn more we've mapped out what we believe the hearing range is for these raptors, and are also learning more about fine-tuned, precise aspects of their hearing. We've got a grant in regards to the microbiome, studying microbiomes of raptors. And this is important because microbiomes are just in general, if you watching TV, are a hot topic on commercials, having a healthy microbiome, but is also just a good indicator, I think, probably of general overall health, not only in us, but in all species. And we're also really interested because what happens in our medical treatment of birds, if we give antibiotics, if we give particular medications, how does that affect the microbiome, if at all, and in a way that's negative? Could that be something that's impactful to the bird in a short-term or long-term situation? So more research into that we're really interested in. And so all of these things, the research, the education and stuff, is kind of our umbrella here at the Raptor Center. And what we've learned over the years is we really feel like raptors are kind of a lens into a larger world. Like we can study raptors, learn from them, and there's a lot of lessons that can be learned and a lot of information to be gleaned about the larger environment in general. There's kind of a fancier term for this. I'm always used to thinking of like them as being an indicator species or a biosentinel, as I've heard some people say that term before. I'm used to the old school indicator species that raptors can indicate issues or current health of the environment. A more newer term, and maybe you've heard of it, is the One Health approach. And it really is looking at kind of the intersection of these three things in the diagram, is that having people really look at what is going on in human health systems, having people that really look at animal health, whether it's wild animals or domesticated animals, both of those groups, and then also looking at environmental health. And that One Health is really like trying to encompass like all of this. So if the environment is in a good state of health and humans are in a good state of health and animals are in a good state of health, we probably have hit this magic intersection point of One Health where all things are in good balance. We also can assume that maybe if one of these things are off, for instance, if animal health, there is an issue in the environment with animals are unhealthy, that could indicate that there's environmental issues or human health issues or both, that these are interconnected pieces and that they all play off of each other. So we kind of at the Raptor Center really are looking at animal health as a major lens that we look at. Not that we aren't looking at the others either, but by looking at animal health, that could also provide us a window of, oh, if this is happening with animals, how could this impact human and environmental health as well? So this One Health kind of discussion is really saying like all these things are interconnected, and that if you screw around with the environment here, what are you screwing around, or what could happen as a result? And these are some things that kind of can get whacked out of balance or show up if you are making too many alterations. Potentially infectious disease can become a bigger player or have different shifts. Antimicrobial resistance, that also can play or shift around. Food supply issues, environmental contamination, these are some broad categories, but we're looking at now more of this raptors as a part of the One Health story. And so we know how raptor health is looking, but what does this mean also towards environmental and human health? And I think there's an old classic example of this, which is the DDT and raptor example, the Rachel Carson example. This is a classic example of One Health before that term was ever really termed. We looked at raptor populations, bald eagles, ospreys, peregrine falcon populations just nose diving, significant, basically no reproduction potentially in the 50s and 60s due to DDT. But we didn't know it was DDT. It's not like, oh, the graph says, oh, the graph is going down. The graph says it's DDT. But knowing that raptor populations were significantly declining is an indicator or an alarm, if you will, and inspired further desire to research. And ultimately, with some amazing work from some amazing people, we found DDT was a primary culprit in their effect. And luckily, learning that led to a ban. And ultimately, like we said at the very beginning, if you were here, bald eagles are kind of like, now, they're not now, really. But we're so fortunate to see them as much as we do. and they're amazing to see. But, even just 20 years ago, could you see them as much? No. And I'm sure even beyond that, it was almost a shock or a miracle if you saw one back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So this is a great story of One Health, of how the raptor was used as a lens to indicate something maybe larger is going on in the environment. Another really famous example, which some people probably are pretty well aware of, but maybe not everybody, and I would use it in my biology classes because I think it's kind of cool. I mean, not that the DDT example isn't cool or interesting to learn, but this one is more modern, more current, and a different story, but also fascinating effects, which is the Indian vulture crisis. And it's not just India, but a variety of locations in Southeast Asia where this initially started. But there are significantly, most vulture species around the world are in some sort of state of threatened, if not critical endangerment or endangerment. And vultures are obligate scavengers, so they live off of scavenging. We have other species of birds that will scavenge here, maybe hunt for not scavenging items in other places, but vultures, that's their deal. They scavenge. And there was some significant data showing massive declines in vulture populations, initially in India, but seen then shortly thereafter in other Southeast Asian countries. And this was due to, so when you see a massive population decline, and we're watching vultures, a species of raptors, have significant losses, it's an indicator that there's a health issue in the environment somewhere else. And luckily, people were able to figure this out. There is a drug or an anti-inflammatory medication called diclofenac. And this was in widespread use amongst farmers or cow owners in India. And it was approved by the government for use for anti-inflammation with cattle. It was heavily used. And it turns out that diclofenac is in very, very, very small amounts, very toxic to vultures. So why does this matter? Well, when the cow dies, if it's been injected, if the cow is not properly disposed of, which in most cases, most of the time they're just left out to be consumed by scavengers, that's what happened. And scavengers consumed the tainted meat with diclofenac and died. And so those are the vultures. And there were some places where up to 99% of the population was gone. And in the case of diclofenac, this was really bad because you could have one tainted carcass, and because vultures will group upon one carcass could really do damage to a wide number of birds, just based on the behavior of the birds. So again, this vulture thing was sort of a lens of like, wow, something major is going on here with the environment. We have to change this. Unfortunately, this situation hasn't really fully gone away either. India has banned that now, and they realized in enough time that the use of that particular medication was detrimental to them. But Spain, there has been use of diclofenac in Spain in the like 2012, 2013 time, mid 2010s. And the EU has not banned it, which the Raptor Center and many other bird conservation organizations feel is a problematic stance. And so the Raptor Center has definitely contributed to this and looked to try and assess the risks of this particular drug's use and advocate for it not to be used. But another example of this, raptors as a lens to overall health. And then there's the at-home, close-to-home version of this, which is the lead toxicity issue, which if many of you know, Dr. Rettig has been one of his big discussion points, I think probably for as long as he was here. And it still is today, unfortunately. Lead toxicity originally started with, it was believed that it was linked to waterfowl. that waterfowl hunters used lead ammunition. The ducks would accidentally potentially ingest some of this lead, and that eagles would consume it through either waterfowl or spent shot accidentally. And this led to a ban in use of lead in waterfowl ammunition, which is a great thing to have occurred in terms of conservation of species. So they were like, boom, we've solved the problem. I think that ban fully went into nationwide effect in 1991 for waterfowl shot. And everybody thought we were in the clear. Check, done, ready to move on to new problems. And here is actually data that was pulled from the Raptor Center, or compiled from the Raptor Center, about our admissions. This is from starting in 1980. So in the first block here that is boxed off, this is prior to that full nationwide ban on waterfowl lead ammunition. And so as you can see, the number of eagles admitted, each bar represents the number of eagles admitted that year to the Raptor Center with lead poisoning. And you can see there is definitely variation from year to year to year. But the average during that time in the light gray was 17%. And then after the ban, the average is 26.8%. So even though we banned that lead ammunition, we actually didn't see a decrease in lead poisoning, at least in our clinic birds, which was very surprising and a bummer, if you can say the least. So you think you've made the action. And what this really is indicating is, wow, that particular action was not enough. It didn't move the needle enough. And there is some other source of lead out there. And I'm sure many of you probably are aware of this too, but it's not just the waterfowl, but it's all ammunition, and particularly for scavenging species like eagles and vultures, which, like in this picture here, is on a deer carcass. If that deer has any sort of trace amounts of lead in it and the eagle consumes it, it's going to consume the lead in there and have lead toxicity. We do blood test all of our eagles that come into the clinic, and it varies from year to year, but around 90% of them on average have a measurable level of lead in their blood. And some of them have significantly high levels, and some of them have poisoning to the point that we cannot treat them at all. The level is so high that it has caused significant health effects that are irreversible. Lead is a soft metal, and so when it hits the tissue, it actually fragments into many hundreds, if not thousands of pieces. This is an X-ray of a deer carcass that was shot with the lead ammunition. You can see the specks there are the lead fragments. And so it's not like there's a big bullet in there that's lead that could be avoided. It's actually scattered throughout the tissue of the deer, which then makes it easy for a scavenger bird to eat it. And then they get lead poisoning, and they may show up to us in various states of that. Sometimes we cannot treat them. Sometimes we can. If we do, it's usually what they call a chelation therapy. So they'll consume a particular substance that actually binds the lead in the digestive system, and then it will come out with the lead. But not everybody can receive the chelation treatment and actually survive, or have a toxicity that's moderate or low enough where they will not have permanent damage. This is a picture of lead. They do these in these hunter training courses to show. So they shot a barrel with lead ammunition. So this is the aftermath of the shot, and the barrel was filled with water. And then they catch what was inside there, and you can see that the lead fragments have definitely fragmented. There's lots of little pieces. And then there's also, they shot with a copper. If you shoot with copper ammunition, which is the goal, which is on the right, the copper stays much more intact. So we've been advocating for years here at the Raptor Center to have a switch from lead-based ammunition for terrestrial hunting, not just waterfowl, to copper. and it's still hard to get people to be on board with it. But we're still pushing because this lead poisoning is an issue for vultures and eagles, and it's completely preventable. Here's a picture of the lead dust from a bullet. So it's just shocking. You think metal shouldn't spread into dust, but this is the actual case with lead. And it's the difference between a healthy bald eagle on the left and one on the right. So another story of raptors is lens health. We see a lot of lead poisoning. We see a lot of lead intakes. Even after the ban, we saw with waterfowl ammunition, we still saw lots of high increased intake rates with lead poisoning for our eagles. So it indicates that there's still work to be done. And then I bring this up because to me, this is the new issue that really intrigues me, but is unfortunate that it's an issue to intrigue me. But maybe some of you have been reading a lot of the stuff in the last year, particularly I've seen many Audubon articles about it, is kestrels in major decline around the United States, including this area. And to me, this is an example of One Health, or using raptors as a lens to potentially identify larger problems. Kestrels, one of our most, I think, charismatic raptor species. They're the most colorful, and dare I say, have a little bit of personality. I'm not supposed to say that birds have personalities, but they kind of, if one did, the kestrel and the head bob and the tail pump might just have it. So here we have two of our kestrels here, Sienna on the left, one of our education birds, and the cricket, who's actually a human imprint. This is what he looked like when he was found before he was brought into us. They have seen a significant decline in kestrels across the nation. At TRC, we see this in our data. Kestrels were probably the most commonly received species statistically in the many beginning years of the Raptor Center, even maybe 10 years ago, potentially, or 20 years ago, they were the most commonly accepted. We got the most individuals of American kestrels. Now they're almost one of the fewest. It's very rare that we get lots of them in the summer. And so we have seen a marked decrease in intakes of this species. This raises an alarm to us. What's going on? Where are the kestrels? And it turns out this trend is national, and many populations are experiencing 50% losses or more. And so the question is, once you see that, what's going on? Right now, I don't think researchers have a solid idea of what is going on, but it makes you want to learn more about what's going on. Could it be loss of grassland, which is one of the most converted habitat types of any habitats in North America? Could it be cavity nests, or nest areas are reduced since they're cavity nesters? Could it be neonicotinoids, which is that new class of pesticides? Is the kestrel the new sort of silent spring of the 2000s, that kind of thing? And some people have proposed anticoagulant rodenticides, that those are toxic potentially for birds, and these birds hunt rodents, and these rodenticides weaken the rodent and make it more likely that they'll get consumed. So these are some things that could be happening. But again, raptors as a lens, kestrels are this trend is telling us that something's off in the environment. And with that, what comes next? Well, we just want to keep researching, keep educating, keep learning about what's going on with each raptor that we receive is sort of tells their own story, but we feel like we've seen so many individual stories now, we can look at a larger story of what's going on potentially with the environment and their species, and we can hope to continue to compile that data today. So I do have two representative ambassadors that we can bring out and talk about during questions if you like. I've got a kestrel and an eagle. Ooh la la, but I'm on my laptop, so what I'm going to do is switch over to our iPad that's just a little bit easier to show off our birds with. Before I do that, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to talk to you about anything in this presentation, or if you want to schedule programming or come for a tour, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to chat with you, or check us out on our website, which is raptor.umn.edu. And of course, we are really incredibly reliant on donor support. The clinic is essentially run entirely on donor support. The birds, while amazing, need to eat and they don't have jobs that pay for themselves. So your support is critical for the operations that occur there. And so if you're interested in learning more about how to become a supporter, there is some information there. You can also contact our development officer, who is Ellen Orndorff. She's fantastic to talk to. So with that ends this, and then we'll get into actual birds, which is the exciting part. Does anybody have any immediate questions? If not,
Let's say, John, the chat room's open rather than turning on 50 mics. If you have a question, just leave them in the chat room and John can read them from there, or we can feed them to him.
all right.
I want to say thank you.
Yeah.
I did see Terry Headley in about 6 different images, so she's still alive and well. That's helpful to know. We have a couple of people. One of the Audubon members, Julian here, works heavily with the kestrel issues here in town, putting up nest boxes and yeah, a lot of ex or current Raptor Center folks.
Yes.
Any questions?
If not, I will just take
Go ahead. We'll let you do your
away
thing. Yep.
and get a bird up to look at.
Thanks, Mary. We'll ask John here in a second. We'll let him get set up with birds. I would hope everyone has had a chance or makes time for the Raptor releases twice a year, the spring and the fall. They are an amazing event. Lots of the education birds on display, plus usually maybe a half a dozen birds that are ready for release.
All right. I think, can you see me?
There you go. We're good.
All right. First, we can't not have a little bird time here. So how do we talk about eagles so much and not actually see an eagle when we have eagles here? So we've got 4 amazing bald eagles that are part of our education staff. And this here is Pi. Pi is a male bald eagle who came to us under sort of more unusual circumstances than a lot of our other birds. A lot of our other birds come to us with some sort of physical injury. Pi is unusual because he's here because we like to say he had inappropriate behavior. He was found approaching people in various places where he was located. He was found riding golf carts with people in them. It's believed, we have a couple eagles that are like this. It's believed a lot of times when eagles are like this, that perhaps something may have happened where they have been fed by humans over time and have developed the wrong association with humans, that humans have sort of screwed that up and been like, oh, I'm a source of food, you can approach me. And that's not what we want to communicate to wild animals, particularly eagles. And I absolutely love Pi, but Pi is a big bird. And if he's enthusiastic about food and he would approach you maybe on your golf course, that could really freak some people out and actually puts him at risk because who knows what those people might do. So he's with us. So he's great because he doesn't have any, what's nice is he's not physically injured. And so we think he'll have a very long life. He's very engaged in wanting to be part of education programming. He's kind of one of my faves of the eagles that we have. We did just recently get a bald eagle named Lutzen, and you may have seen her focused in on Star Tribune article actually this week. She also is from Lutzen. And she also was, we believe, she was young and she fell out of a nest, we think, and was being fed by humans. And therefore, when she's being fed by humans, because humans think, oh, I need to feed the bird, it's on the ground, it's in trouble, that actually interrupts or terminates the bond between the adult and the young baby, because the baby's not begging for food, and therefore they stop feeding. And then it hasn't really fully had that full fledging process. And so Lutzen started approaching people up in Lutzen, and there's a video of her riding a cop car. She's in a similar boat as Pi, but has done amazing here in terms of training, and is just a delightful, beautiful, beautiful ambassador for her species. We have another eagle, Max, who's one of our most popular birds who come through, and she came to us with a wing injury. So a collision with the power line, and also lead poisoning. So like we said, lead is pretty commonly found in all of our eagles that we get, which is unfortunate. So
Can I throw a question to you, John?
Absolutely.
Are there concerns about chronic wasting disease affecting birds? It's been in the news quite a bit through the hunting season this week.
I have not heard of those. That is not something that I've heard much about in terms of discussions here, or I'm not aware of chronic wasting disease being a major issue with birds. But I guess I can ask. I will ask ask Dr. Hall. I've never heard of any of that before.
I know they're setting up stations to bring in your deer for testing, and
right.
You wonder
if it's also that way. I know like right now the big thing, and I don't know if they're doing it with birds, but we're doing it too, is with other species, is just the SARS-CoV-2. I think that's an interesting one that might be tested for, that there are repositories in wild animals that's being displayed, also definitely in zoo or captive animals, but I'm not aware of too much information about the chronic wasting disease.
Okay.
So I said, I've heard that there's a theory that the decline of kestrels in towns correlates with the rise of Cooper's hawk population. That is an excellent thing. That is also a theory that I've read about as well. I think more research is needed. I was reading an article about a research article about declining kestrel populations in a particular geographic area, I believe out east. And that particular area, they looked at a variety of different reasons, and they ruled out Cooper's hawks, although that was a hypothesis that was proposed by the researchers. But I think that could be very dependent on location to location, because certainly Cooper's hawks populations have increased. So it's certainly worth exploring. But that particular one study in that one geographic area, they claim they ruled it out, or it was not a major factor. What are the signs of lead poisoning in birds? Usually when it's extremely advanced, there's a lot of green mucus, or not mucus, excuse me, mute. So waste products of the bird are green. Usually we see green colored feathers or tinged feathers on the tail or around the cloacal area. That's usually like a easy to see sign. Also, the bird definitely has some sort of maybe tremors or brain damage type situation, because lead obviously is a neurotoxin. So you might see odd behaviors, or just not able to actually track very well sensory stimuli. Those are kind of two of the big things that I think are pointed out. Moderate or low levels of lead sometimes are not detectable visually, especially low. So that's why we take blood on all of the eagles and vultures that we receive, and we run lead tests on them, period, whether or not they show outward signs.
they also sound different. They have a different squeak. It's like they have a bad cold. Something's wrong. It just sounds wrong.
Oh, interesting. I have not interacted a lot in the clinic with lead poison. So that's
there's not a lot of them running around, right? It's a kiss of death. So that
it's sad. Safest way to capture an injured raptor to bring in for care? That is a great question. And I will admit that I'm not an expert, a huge expert on that, only because most of my job has not been having to capture injured raptors. Most of the time when we tell people on the phone is like, a lot of times it's like, can you throw a box or a laundry basket or something over it, if possible, if it's on the ground. A lot of times that helps greatly. Or even going in with, if you have gloves, and then going in with a towel or a large blanket, that really helps to reduce the stimulus effect, and then they are more calm. Usually involves grabbing on the sides, but it really depends on the situation. We do have information on our website about specifics of grabbing, and actually we are coming up to Give to the Max time here next week, a week from today, and we're running a 12-hour Give to the Max marathon of information, videos, facts about our birds. But I know one of the videos that we will run is about how do you go out and grab a bird, and that should also be available on our YouTube channel. So we'll have Gail Buell, who is an amazing wildlife rehabber and also former education manager here, who walks through the process of like, this is what you do to get the bird if you have a captive bird. But usually when I've taken calls from folks, we usually are like, can you get a box on it? And that really does help reduce the situation or the intensity of the situation, although easier said than done, because I will admit I've never actually gone and grabbed it. It's easy to tell someone what to do. It's another thing to do it. So great questions. I do have one more representative bird if you'd like. I'm going to have to take this one out. So I'm going to take a moment back here. All right. We had to show off the little bird too. And after just talking about this amazing species, here is Sienna, the American kestrel. Sienna is a female American kestrel, and she came to us because, we'll see if we can get this in here. Her one of her wings, as you can see, is partially amputated. So back here, this is the full wing right there. And then she had an amputated partial back wing on her right. It's been a long day, I have to think. All right. And so she's here with us because of that. When she came, there seemed to be indications that perhaps she had some sort of acclimation to humans. And a lot of times we do see with, particularly with owls, we see a lot of, and kestrels, not as much, but a lot of imprinting where it's clear that somebody has captured them as a baby, tried to feed them, they've imprinted on humans, and so they just don't have the knowledge or ability to really get back out into the wild. I just love kestrels because they're so gorgeous and what amazing coloration, but also just an amazing ambassador for grasslands and raptors in general. So I'm a big fan, and so the loss of this species to me is it just makes me sad. And I'm hoping that that research can figure out what's going on and how we can get kestrel populations stabilized across North America. But she's an amazing ambassador for us. She does lots of programming over the years, showing people what a kestrel is. Because to be honest, when we bring a bird out to a program that's a bald eagle, most people got it. They get really excited, especially the students, about this kestrel, because it's probably a species they've never even knew existed or thought to look for it if they were in the right habitat. So an amazing, amazing bird to have as well. So yeah, hopefully we'll get some more information on kestrels. Yes, thank you for setting up kestrel boxes, because what a cool species. So those are the two friends that I brought today. We have more friends, but those are the two that we have here today. thank you so much for having me. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them or answer them if you have any further about any of those.
Is there any drop in numbers for lead toxicity, or is it? You'd like to think it's going down, but
We have not seen any major drops in lead toxicity that's notable from clinic records, as far as I'm aware. And again, it varies from year to year, but the data that we see says that it's not really, if anything, if at best, it might be stable, but that's to us is not a good enough answer or not a good enough result, especially considering we know for sure what the issue is.
Eagles sitting there on the floor.
Does anybody have their camera on?
No, I turned it off.
Why?
All right.
I just don't want people to. I don't want
Yeah, looking
people
at
like
each
to
other.
do the microphones. It just
They should be looking at this.
You say turn on cameras, leave the mics on.
Because if you're doing a presenter,
All right. So Julian, how many Kestrel chicks did our boxes hatch this
don't do it
year?
now. Don't do it now, but yeah.
Well, it's at the end. People are supposed to ask questions. It might feel like looking, you're,
That's always that.
okay. No, I like it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for having me, everyone. It's very, very,
Thanks, John. Thank you.
all right.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
hi to
Thanks
all the-
everybody for coming too.
Yeah.
And hi to all the Raptor Center volunteers out there. I know you're there. So thank you for your work and thank you for coming.
And thank you to the birds. Thanks for coming, Kestrel and Eagle.
You gonna say goodbye, Pi?
Yeah.
There he is. He's sitting there looking at me like, when are you gonna feed me? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.